We're glad you're all here, and we hope you're thinking seriously about lifespan wellness of some sort. We want to give you a little bit of a background about our program, and then we also want to kind of share some things, initiatives that we're trying to start across campus, and we hope you'll all join in and support us, but get involved in whatever way you possibly can. So this is our mission of Family and Consumer Sciences. We're hoping to engage students in learning theories, but more importantly, perhaps, is the practice that's behind those theories and those professional skills that we know that are important to empower individuals for whatever profession you might be going into. So that's kind of important to us. We think that there's a lot of information that is not only formal education, but also informal education, and we spend a lot of our time doing what we call high impact practices, getting you involved and engaged in critical thinking, creative thinking, and applying a lot of the information that's around you. So we know also that it's important for us to get involved with community partners, to do everything we can to connect across campus, interdisciplinary sorts of things, but to get out into the greater community, whether it's here or elsewhere around the state or even at the national level. We think that's pretty important too. The other thing that we know that is a part of this mission is the fact that health and wellness are a part of everything we do. When you're not feeling well, you're unhealthy, it's pretty tough, isn't it, to keep going? Yeah, pretty tough. The other part of that is always thinking about prevention. So there's the medical field, who's more or less the after effects of what happens in fixing the broken. We want to stop it from even happening to begin with and thinking about prevention. So these are the degree programs that we offer. We're probably a unique profession in that we have so many different opportunities or programs that weave in and out together, but they're all encompassed in this whole lifespan wellness or wellness across the lifespan initiative that we have. So you kind of think about all those different opportunities that could be a part for students as well. So in 2015, we worked together with Panhandle Public Health District, which is actually housed in Hemingford, but covers the whole panhandle of Nebraska. And their Worksite wellness we weren't the first one to get involved with them. What they've been doing is working with the hospital, the community, like for instance, downtown in the businesses, but also the community of Chadron and the city offices to do what they call Worksite wellness. Get people walking, moving, thinking about treadmills, walking for lunch sort of activities, taking in opportunities for support groups where they're looking at diet and exercise connected, cooking classes, that doing those sorts of activities can really help them see how wellness is a part of that. So we became a part of this Worksite Wellness in 2015, and we've been working towards that initiative for quite some time. So we are looking at the idea in our Burkheiser building, starting there first, because this is where we all are at this time, and thinking about, we have a treadmill and a bicycle, exercise bicycle in one of our rooms. So we as faculty can go back there and in between classes and stress relief ourselves, but we also encourage our students to do the same thing. Right now they're housed in the Ag Computer Lab. So there's a lot of students back there using computers, and we try to monitor the time that we're in those exercise experiences with that equipment. The other thing we have is a blood pressure cuff. So we've been able to offer that to our faculty and staff as well. And this was also provided by Panhandle Public Health District for us, so we could actually start the initiative of gun wellness. Excuse me. Yeah, go ahead.
Students could use that now during midterms week. Get out of one of our classes and think you need a little bit of blood pressure checking and some stress relief after class.
And the other thing we're hoping to get out and about, we have a few signs up in Burkheiser, but this is our real kickoff for this experience. So we have these footprints that we want to get around our building, but and we have mapped Burkheiser building, so we know how many steps it takes to take a walk around and how much it's exercise it's going to give you, but also how many calories you might burn as you do that. So you're going to start seeing more of these signs. They're on pedestals around not only our building, but we're hoping now to spread across campus so we can map the steps from Burkheiser to the science building to the student center, math and science along the way, and over to the athletic activities and so forth. So you're probably going to see some of these steps there. You should also see some table tents in the cafeteria. So we're partnering with Tracy Shuck and the individuals in the cafeteria to promote, again, that whole wellness initiative. So we can, again, support the idea of exercise and movement in all kinds of ways. The other thing that we have looked at also is the trails. I don't know how many of you have seen this little booklet, but it's mapped all the great hiking and trails that are around the Panhandle. I'll just pass this little guy around. You can get these free at the Chamber of Commerce if you'd like to. But it has really wonderful opportunities to take those little walks. And they don't take too long often, or it might be something that you want to spend a little more time looking at as well. Let's see. We also have some collaborative wellness initiatives with our partners. So we are part of the community Worksite wellness group as well. So the cement trails that are up behind Burkheiser, around behind the football field, are the trails that I was a part of when we started this whole community wellness initiative. We again have partnered with people like at the Chadron Hospital, City of Chadron. There's some other things happening in alliance with the public schools that are tied to this wellness initiative too, which are partners and challenging each other to walk more and to take those initiatives to be well. Embedding wellness in all of our courses, so each of the courses we teach in those programs that you saw, that list, have something connected with wellness and engaging in there, whether it's high impact practices, activities, or projects, or getting up and moving. I know Aaron Norman is doing a lot of breathing exercises in my FYI class. We do a lot of movement and getting up and thinking about how you can take that deep breath and then relax a little bit. Brain breaks, brain gym sort of activities, and really thinking about a lot of movement to go along with that. And then, of course, thinking about other initiatives that might be out there in our communities. We have a lot of those next steps that are happening. I talked to you about those signage, so we hope that you're going to be watching for that to happen across campus. We invite and encourage you to help and support us. So if you want to be a part of this step process and do some walking and step those off for us and help us map, that would be wonderful. And also any other community partners that you know of, that would be great too. Anybody have any questions about that part? Okay, I'm going to turn it over.
Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about Worksite wellness. Prior to coming to Chadron State, I worked for basically an occupational medicine group. So we would go to work sites and watch people work, basically, and then try and figure out how to make their work sites safer and healthier. A lot of times, people didn't want to see you at their work site because, well, they afraid they were going to lose their job for things like the fitness levels and deals like that. So it was kind of an interesting job, but nothing I wanted to do the rest of my life, obviously. So why worksite wellness? Basically because we spend a lot of our lives at work. Roughly 36% of our time is spent at work. That's a lot of time. It's kind of depressing, isn't it? So that's why you become a professor, and then it knocks down to about, I don't know, a lot less than that. Yeah, about 50-50, which I think is a fair trade-off. But 36% of your time is a lot of time. And the other 32%, what do you got? Sleeping. So you're either sleeping or working. A few small slices of pizza in there where you're eating and drinking. So yeah, so worksite wellness is important because we do spend a lot of time at work. So some different models and strategies that we used when I used to work with occupational health and safety, and these can also apply to family life. You know, it doesn't have to just be workplaces. But so it used to be worksite health promotion. You see those two up top, and occupational health and safety. It was kind of an either-or kind of proposition. You either had worksite health promotion or you had occupational health and safety coming in. But now they've came with more of an integrated strategy with the two. So the first thing we look at is the intervention target. So it used to be you just look at the individual's behavior. And that's kind of like correcting your children's behavior without correcting your own behavior. It doesn't work very well. It works for a little while. But so we took a different approach with a more integrated strategy where we fix parents' behavior and the kids' behavior, and things seem to work a little bit better. We have responsibility for worker health. It used to be, it was the individual worker, it was their responsibility to be healthy. And then I think it was roughly in the 1930s where it started to be where workers, the employee, started to pay for the worker's health. So, because it was in their best interest that they had healthy workers. And also it was a way for them to give something besides money to the worker, because they didn't have any money to give them. So they're like, well, we'll give them insurance and things like that instead. So, and then we went to the audience, would be the worker, and shifted that to the workers, the union, the management, and everybody. So it became more inclusive of everybody that was involved, not just the worker. And then the program planning, this is where they'd bring in outside experts. This is where I used to work. We'd come in, like I said, we'd watch people work. I think the strangest place they sent me was to a mile deep in the mine in Deadwood, Lead Deadwood area, which was kind of unnerving. Just before I'm getting on the elevator to go down a mile, the safety guy tells me that nobody on there wants me here because they're afraid they're gonna lose their jobs because of me, just before they sent me down a mile underground. So as I'm going down, I'm like, I might not come up from here. But they sent me down, and you're basically in, it looks like a small basement. It's like a tunnel. You got a light on your hat, and you're walking around this dirty, dank place with water all over. And I asked the guy, what happens if my light goes off? He goes, don't move, because you might fall in a hole. Just stand there. Somebody will come and find you. I'm like, oh, that's nice. So, especially since none of you want me here in the first place. So, but yeah, so I was in there to watch them work, watch how they work. Basically, they're doing construction underground. So I had to watch them work and see if there's anything that I could help them with, moving things better, more ergonomically. But a lot of them had been working there since the late 70s. So they'd been underground for just about my entire life. So they would work 12-hour shifts on, 12 hours off, and that was the way they lived their lives for quite some time. And they were afraid that I was going to come in and put new standards in place that they would physically not be able to meet, and they would lose their jobs because of it. So that's why they wanted to leave me in the bottom of the mine. But I made it out, and I'm not going back. So integrated strategy is the way to go when in your classroom, in your home, wherever. You want everybody involved as much as possible. And the reason for it, the biggest thing is when you look at businesses, they're always talking about return on investment. The ROI is what everybody's always looking at, especially if you run the business or own the business. So the first one, health protection, that's the things that the business themselves can do to protect the worker, like putting in safety measures, all those types of things. And then the health promotion would be like what we're doing here. We're promoting walking and different things like that to promote the health of the employees of Chadron State or the students of Chadron State. So trying to create an entire environment that starts you off with, lifespan wellness. So some of the things that it does, attract and retain employees. It's expensive to find new employees, so you want to keep the ones you have as healthy as possible. Healthy workers are happy workers, so morale is going to be improved. Improve employee productivity, and contain employee healthcare costs. That's probably the biggest one nowadays for employees. So the big three that most preventable causes of disease, these are three that I spend a lot of time in my classes. Mainly physical inactivity and poor diet are the two. Smoking a little bit, but for an employee, smoking is big, physical inactivity and poor diet. In my classes, I spend a lot of time on physical inactivity and poor diet. Generally start with poor diet and work forward. So, but as far as making changes like this with these three, the big three, you don't want to just all of a sudden one day say, I'm going to stop smoking, I'm going to start exercising, and I'm going to start eating better. That's going to end miserably for you. I think about 99% of the time that fails. They have actual statistics that show that. So 99%, I'm not a mathematician, but 99% failure rate is pretty high rate. So, so I always tell people to start off, pick one thing. So out of these, I would say start with diet. Start with your diet, and even within the diet, you want to break it down even further. Start with one meal. Start with breakfast. Try and make some positive changes with breakfast, and then after that takes, then move on to lunch. And then once that takes, move on to supper or dinner, whatever we call it supper where I come from. But and then you want to know why you're making that one little change. Because if you don't know why, the change is not going to stick. And it has to be a why that is why to you, not why because someone told you should do it. It's why because you want to do it, you want to make changes. And then you have to find out how to do it. And how, you're going to probably have to get advice from somebody else, unless you are a personal trainer, which if you're a personal trainer and you smoke and are inactive and have a poor diet, you're not probably a very good personal trainer. So, so you may need to get some outside help with the how. But it's easy to get caught up in the infinite when you are trying to make changes like this. There's so much information out there that there's just infinite number of things that you can do different. So it's hard to pick that one thing. So you want to try and make one finite change as much as possible. Just pick that one thing, and that will help snowball into bigger things, because it creates positive energy and it just keeps you moving forward into. So start with poor diet, then pick on the other things. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Moody. Any questions before I stop talking? Okay, thank you.
My very esteemed colleagues have done a great job of setting this whole framework up for the dimensions of wellness. And there are sometimes 6, 7, 8 various models, but I typically do consider all of these various dimensions. I'm going to kind of hit on a couple, 3 that are real near and dear to the pieces of FCS that I typically teach. Besides, let's see, the physical, intellectual that we all try to work on, the social, emotional, also a bit about the vocational and economic, the financial dimension of wellness is a big part of what I'm concerned with, as well as environmental and spiritual is always there as well. Did you know there was such a thing as mental health first aid? How many of you are CPR first aid trained? Have you heard about mental health first aid training and certification? It can be as simple as 1 8-hour quick training session, or as extensive as several months leading to certification, where you might be a mental health first aid representative. And I believe there are 1 or more representatives on our campus who fill that purpose. Our counselors, looking closely at the statistics, at least a couple years ago, as many as 25%, maybe more, of our students on campus can be classified as having high anxiety leading to depression. And that's significant enough to warrant special care and consideration on our part as faculty. Why we have a blood pressure cuff in our building, and why we are concerned about the health and well-being, the total health and well-being of our students. Ways that we can advocate and improve our own emotional health, and hopefully that spreads and kind of dribbles over and fills other buckets, is to be positive. And that's why these people across the hall from me keep the windows open, the fresh air and the sunshine, because I can be that dark person across the hall that will think all the what ifs, what can go wrong. If someone needs to worry, I'm her. And if someone needs to think about the ultimate what could go wrong, I will think of it. But they bring me back full circle and bring me back to that point of finding the good in whatever the situation might be. And I think that students as well need to practice that a bit. I think Dr. Madsen encourages journaling, and herself has been on the finding gratitudes in every day and reiterating and reminding her students to look for those things. Even if it seems bleak sometimes, there are things to be positive about in our life. Meditation, massage, yoga, Tai Chi, and aquatics. And you all have that wonderful facility across the street. I'll tell you, I have enjoyed, that's been my greatest benefit. I've made a couple of easy decisions. One of them was giving up soda. I'm not giving up coffee just yet, but cutting down, swapping for that green tea. And I've not had to make a whole lot of other dietary changes, and it's helping. But exercise and the water aerobics class, the water yoga class is just awesome as far as improving my well-being, my physical and mental, emotional. I don't know what it's doing for my hair. That may not be the best alternative, but I don't care. the financial wellness piece is one that many people overlook, and you're never too young to begin the process of building and working toward good financial well-being. A lot of retirees or folks approaching the point in life I am will look around and say, I can't retire because I did not do the work for the past 20, 30, or 40 years, one's long work life, in providing for a safe and secure future. You should begin budgeting before you make that first salaried paycheck. And part of that should be saving, debt elimination, and long-term retirement planning. Depending on someone else, especially our government, to do it for us is not the smartest or healthiest way for individuals to plan and prepare for their futures. So financial wellness is an important dimension of the whole piece. I think environmental wellness is something that we're all vested here in this beautiful place in which we're fortunate to live, and to want to be more sustainable stewards of our environments, whether it is like my little poster, buy, use, swap, make, thrift, borrow, whatever. It kind of goes back to the Depression era of save it, use it till it's all gone, and then save it somewhere else. But if it is not us, who then will teach the next generation about honoring and reserving those very limited resources that we have, and things like modeling safety. I'm very impressed when I see some of our faculty members riding on their bicycles to work and wearing helmets, using the safety equipment that they do as a very good role model. And all of us could probably benefit greatly by simplifying our environments. That's my next goal.
I think that's Erin's. I got hers here. So Miss Norman couldn't make it, so I told her I would try and cover some of hers.
She's doing another webinar.
Yeah. Her motto this year in her class has been a little less talk and a lot more action, which is the Toby Keith song. I don't know if she plays it during class, but that was been her motto for the year. And basically what she's trying to do is talk less and move more in her classroom. And she teaches one of the FYIs. I teach an FYI as well, the healthy skepticism. And within all of our classes, we try and implement more moving around and less doing this, less sitting and watching us talk. So she does a 5-minute warm-up before her class. I'm not sure what exactly all she does, but I know she has her class up and moving around for the 5 minutes. And she's found that she has better attention. The students are more engaged and happier in class just because of that. Group fitness, she takes her class over to the PAC once in a while, and they do group fitness activities. They walk. I think Socrates was probably the first one to walk around with his class, so he was a pretty smart guy, so we can all learn something from that. Social health, often overlooked, so she talks a lot about logging off and tuning in with the people around you rather than those connected to you via Facebook or whatever other social media you're on. And just trying to bring things closer to home. We have a lot of future teachers in our classes, so we're hoping that the things we're doing in our classrooms will be paid forward to their students as well. So that's the other thing that we're very conscious of, our students taking what we've taught them and moving forward with it. So see if she had anything else. No? Is that one back to you?
Yeah, yes. I'm thinking this discipline of family and consumer science is sort of, it's celebrating its 109th year of existence. And it was formed based on that foundation of really concern for individuals, families, within their communities, for health and wellness, and basically taking care of one another. And we circle back to looking at quality in our lives. We seem to be faced with some of the same problems every generation. And so the teaching and the research and the development just doesn't end. But, well, that's job insurance too, I guess. Our association has had 3 major goals, big challenges for annual initiatives. In 2016, it was physical well-being. Much of the research about obesity in America and what to do about it, led us to some big national impetus to make change happen. And I think that is working. For this year, the focus was financial and resource well-being. And next year at the annual conference, which I believe is in Atlanta again? Atlanta, Georgia? Emotional health and relationship well-being is the focus. And I think that it sort of brings things back together. I forgot to mention a couple of other things. One of our conferences, we had Dan Buettner speak about the blue zones. Have y'all heard of this? It's a fascinating book. This guy works for, I think he still works for National Geographic. He was sent to several places in the world where people lived to be 100 years old and lived well. And his objective was to find out what they all had in common. And what he found out was they did not have all the same things in common in different geographic regions and for different sets of reasons. People mastered the fine art of living happily a long time and healthfully. It sort of is, it's a great read. I'm not gonna do any spoiler alerts, but whatever. He's since followed up with a book called Thrive. And this one is specifically looking at happiness. And perhaps you've been hearing some of that buzz. Where in the world are the happiest people? Are they the wealthiest? Not at all. Denmark, the Netherlands, a number of those Scandinavian countries that are kind of wet, kind of miserable, maybe atmospherically or whatever, not at all the wealth. They pay very high taxes, but they have no worries. They have, they live simply. They appreciate one another. They have forced vacations. Men and women have extensive, long leave of absence when a child is born. So bonding with the child and establishing strong families is key to their societal foundations, and they're just happier. So I think there's much to be learned by looking around, and National Geographic is better than just, gorgeous photography and naked people. You can learn a lot by actually reading magazines and looking at all the great assets that are gleaned from other places in the world by perhaps living simply. And I think that is it.
I might throw in another initiative that the FYI class that I teach is called Survival Skills 101. And we just hosted, and Mr. Nady's here, a class project with a speaker. Who was that speaker? Holly Hoffman came. And what did she talk about? You tell him? Never giving up, yeah. She is Survivor 101. Tori's back there in the back. Anything you want to share? Nope. Pretty cool lady. She was the runner-up on the season 21 Survivor show. She talked a lot about how she got on the show. Took her a couple years to get on the show. What happened when she was on that show and the whole experience of not ever giving up, because that's what she really wanted to do after day 5, but she didn't. And so a lot of that class is looking at how do you survive. They all thought I was going to drop them in the forest when they signed up for that class. And I said, it's much bigger than that. Survival skills require a lot of other sorts of things, and that really truly is taking care of yourself and learning how to live in a way that's really, I think, healthy and well, and prevention. The other passion I have when I was the director of our Child Development Center here on campus is to read a lot of Richard Louve's work, and I don't know if you've heard of him at all, but he wrote this book called The Last Child in the Woods, and concern for children not going outside. And literally, I would have parents, and not many, but 1 or 2 for sure, at least every year, that would say, I don't want my children to go outside today, it's just too cold. And I'd say, wow, that's part of what we do here in our program. We go outside every day, whether it's cold or just a little bit cold, and we learn how to dress a little warmer and learn how to zip our coats, and we learn how to take care of ourselves. And might be out there for 30 seconds, and it took us 30 minutes to get dressed, but we know how important it is to get outside. So if you get a chance to read a book that's really powerful, what happens if our children don't go outside, and what happens to nature and nature-based play. So we created our nature center 1 in 100 in the world. Here on campus, 2009 that happened. You'll find it over behind the Burkheiser complex as well. But think about outside, what happens when we go outside, and the difference between all the time being inside, like the colleagues have talked about tonight, that we spend a lot of time working. And we need to really think about the other spaces that we can occupy that are going to help us prevent those illnesses and really be a lot more healthy, happy, and well. Yeah? Questions?
Where did the 100-year-old people?
There's Okinawa was one. There was a little, I think the closest one to us was in like around Mankato, Minnesota.
Actually, it was Loma Linda, California was the only American city. Mankato decided they were going to be the next one, the number 8. They were going to create a healthy environment.
It was in California. Where was it?
Yeah. Costa Rica was one of the places. There's a Sardinia, Italy.
Denmark, wasn't there Denmark? I was thinking Denmark.
That's the happy place. Oh my goodness.
Guess you can't be both happy and healthy.
The unique thing about the Italian place, that was the only place in the world where the men lived longer than women. And the reason they surmised was men had happy hour and women paid the bills. They made the money, they sent it home, but they went out and socialized with their colleagues, their brotherhood, while the women were home cooking all those fabulous meals, and they ate very well. And they drank a lot of red wine, which broke some of the rules in other countries. In Costa Rica, the wealthiest people living in the urban areas lived the shortest amount of time. The poor people who lived in the more remote villages and had to walk great distances to collect their water, they gardened and farmed their own food, ate local, lived the longest. They didn't have the health care, they didn't have whatever advantages of more urban environments afforded them, but they took care of it themselves and lived longer. Yeah, it's a tease. You're going to have to read the whole thing.
Have to read the book.
Some of it's diet-driven and some of it's exercise-driven.
Yeah, a lot of it's-
Other intangibles.
Those were kind of the main ones were diet and movement.
What was Mankato?
I'm not, well, they have a challenge in the book to create your own blue zones, and so they were
They
trying to.
became a smoke-free city early on. Total smoke-free city.
Walking initiatives and things like that, and just physical activity. And
Schools, lunch programs encouraged only healthy choices. There weren't other unhealthy alternatives, and lots of community business buy-in to do challenges. And we thought about that too. We've got our little walking thing, the green dotted line. It takes 4 laps to make a mile, and to see between ag and FCS. How many steps we can put on. I know if you hike that hill, you got me beat. Getting to and from the pavilion and whatever, but I just think we've got some opportunities. A lot of it is the social connections as well. Someplace in China, where the women got together and they played mahjong, and
they talked a lot about the social that went along with it as well, that added to the health and longevity.
the role of being the elder, the wise elder, to pass along oral culture and things like that. That really expanded.
And most of them, their commonality was that the elder people weren't just put in homes. They were basically part of the family. They lived in, so you had the elders raising the younger children and things as well. So that was one of the other commonalities as well, that full generations lived in one household. So.
And childcare for extended families. So when families are together like that, they can share that, the need of taking care of children. Lots of green spaces are happening all over the world. New Zealand is probably the leading country that's focusing on nature-based play, but certainly getting those outside spaces to be attractive enough, not just for children, but for families' use as well. lot of communities are working on that too.
I was going to try to find the Japanese word that the Okinawans used, and instead of something my mother used to say, there's starving children somewhere. It moved from China to Ethiopia and various places. You eat it all. If it's on your plate, clean your plate. In Japan, they said, stop before you're full. Eat about 2/3 of what you want. And
I always
that
impart
word
that
for
with my students that, we've all been told to clean our plates, which was poor advice, because when you make a kid clean their plate, basically you teach them to override that signal to stop eating. So they learn to, well, I'm full, but I'm going to keep eating, because sometimes kids are full of crap. They'll tell you they don't want to eat anymore just because they don't like what you've served them. But a lot of the times it's you don't want to teach them to ignore that full signal. And that's what happens a lot of times when people are forced to clean their plates. So don't rush home and tell your mom that I told you that she's wrong. So I don't want to deal with that. Yeah, down the mine shaft.
But while you still have moms and dads, let them know you do appreciate them. That's worth a lot. I guess I forgot to mention that too. Part of the blue zones, and especially in Loma Linda, religion, or the Seventh-day Adventist philosophy and a faith-filled practice that was a very active part of their lives, was credited for a great deal of their longevity.
And I think their fasting as well was credited, because they have a lot of these places have fasting periods where they'll go like a 24-hour period without eating and things like that as well. So that was another part of it, one of the other components.
And a little tiny quote from Thrive was, religion and faith are often linked to happier lives. However, according to Ed Denier, author of the book Happiness, it is religion's broader lessons that lead to happiness, acting selflessly and morally, having a sense of purpose, finding meaning in daily activities, and expanding positive emotions on a continual basis. That's really key, that piece of spirituality that may be part of all religions or among those who practice no religion but just live a spirit-filled life are true keys to thriving.
Was it Hakuna Matata?
Hakuna Matata.
For the Disney movie? Yeah. That I had to watch more than any man should have to when my kids were little, but so.
Not Frozen?
Oh, that one too. Yep.
You were talking about one of the tools to healthy living was healthy eating. I have a lot of friends that are constantly trying different diets. It's protein, high carbohydrate, whatever. What are your thoughts on these diets, and what would your suggestion be to these people? To me, they're starving themselves of something their body really needs by doing that. So.
Yeah, generally, I always tell people find something that is sustainable and isn't too far removed from what they've normally eaten. Because if you make it too far removed from what you normally eat, you're probably not going to stick with it. Or if it's something that's difficult to follow, confusing to follow, you're probably not going to stick with it. And that's why I always tell people to start with just one meal. Start with breakfast and work on breakfast for a month and just see if you can make some positive changes in breakfast. And that's the other thing, that everybody has a different definition of what healthy eating is. You ask 10 different people what's healthy eating. Somebody may say it's eating low-fat Hot Pockets. That's healthy eating to them. Or only eating one handful of Cheetos rather than two. That's healthy eating to them. So you have to establish what healthy eating is to that individual, and then find out what foods they like to eat, and then show them how to prepare those foods maybe in a better way. Maybe they can keep eating the foods they're eating, but just prepare them differently. And so it's really individual for each person. But yeah, most of the fad diets, things like that, they're called fads for a reason. Just like mullets were a fad. They don't last forever, sadly. I mean, but mullets and Zubas, I mean, we can't all live forever in those. But yeah, fad diets, they generally, I think, like I said, it's about 99% fail rate for most of those types of diets. And you have to, like I said, you have to find things that make you feel satiated, feel full. And that's the problem with a lot of those diets. People are hungry all the time because they've cut out one macronutrient or the other, and they just feel hungry all the time. And when you're hungry, that's all you can think about is being hungry. And we only have so much willpower to go around. And if you're spending some of that willpower to keep you from eating a certain food, you're going to be lacking willpower in other areas. So it's basically just got to stay full on good foods and real foods. Yeah, and then I always say real foods. If you got to open a package, it's probably processed. So you want to eat as much real food as you can, because you don't hear a lot of problems with people binge eating broccoli or anything like that. I mean, there's yeah, fruits, vegetables, proteins. You know, if you like chicken, pork, whatever type of proteins you like. If you're a vegetarian, you can eat oils and things like that. So basically, the less processed, the better. Because most of the processed foods, the thing they have in common is they create a lot of inflammation in the body. And it's like if you get a sliver in your finger, you get inflammation. When we eat vegetable oils and processed foods, we get inflammation basically systemically in our entire body. So yeah, try and eat as much. Be the best if you could grow it in your garden and eat it there. But you know, produce and meats, and so some general advice anyway, I guess. But sustainability is the biggest thing. Something that you can picture yourself eating and you look forward to eating. You're not dreading your diet, you know, that you get up in the morning, you're looking forward to breakfast, and you're looking forward to lunch because you're eating delicious foods that fill you up and make you feel happy. So no use being miserable. So.
About 100 years ago, Chadron State Normal School had a campus garden, and we'd like to see a campus garden once again and have grow our own, have it enclosed in such a way that we could winter it and harvest and incorporate it in those foods classes. And Dr. Ms. Norman's actually working with Teresa and Matt on their hatching of chicken project, and they'll eventually get cooked.
Farm to plate, or
So, from class to class.
It's a truism, I think, to say things change. But I'd like the two of you who've been here the longest, have you thought of the sequence of changes in your department over the years? For even the name of the department, I recall one time it was called Human Ecology.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about that as to how you arrived here.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, gosh. How we arrived here.
That is the thing that you're doing now.
Family and consumer sciences as it exists now was pretty much that same baby in its infancy when they argued about names. It was going to be some kind of domestic ecology. And from that, home and economics got attached. And we were home economics for a long time. And it kind of had a big black eye in society, as all home economics was the MRS degree, where girls went showing off their skills of being a good wife, and they got married and never did anything else. Like, being married and raising a family isn't a real career, just because there's not a paycheck involved. This world does not acknowledge the professional level of managing a home and family. So we had to kind of break away from that stereotypic shell of a program and expand upon the real income earning career pathways that came out of this discipline that was all about nutrition and wellness and caring for children and parenting and building and decorating and improving homes and worrying about
relationships,
apparel and the finances and the whole enchilada. And we're still about that. But today we also try to encourage people to recognize that there are viable income earning careers related to the profession. And while we do that, we also still tend to find the family a pretty important job as well. We really do two jobs, and everyone will do those two jobs. It's just a matter of putting it all in some kind of balance.
And I think there has been a lot of change, but I'm not sure, I don't believe our profession has changed. We're still core to what we believe, that family being the most stable unit in society, and that center ground. And living simply. You know, we don't need a lot to live. What we need is to make sure that we are networking, connecting, using resources, and building a lot of relationships with people, which is where we are back to, I think, today, making sure that people are thinking the same thing.
Out of curiosity, do you look at other kinds of families other than what might be experienced here in the United States, with 3 or 4 husbands or 3 or 4 wives?
Well, we've been talking, I have a class this fall called Relationships 2.0. And whether or not the institution of marriage has outlived its practical purpose. It has certainly changed in definition. The whole identity of family has changed dramatically. And yet if we look back, even 100 years ago, there were many displaced and disassociated families, families that were recombined and grouped in ways that look like today's blended families, that look like surrogate families without formal adoption or formal fostering. There were many of those recombined kinds of human beings that just helped one another survive in place. You brought up an interesting thought that I've also been thinking about. We've come a long ways in education, and yet we seem to cycle back around in theory and practice. We are graduates of country school. One room educational models that were close to home and multi-aged and very diverse. One teacher in my example had as many as 27 kids at a time, from kindergartners through 8th graders, had all levels, abilities, and disability levels, and managed to educate everybody with very few resources. Families anteed up where they could to enrich the environment. And guys, I think we might be going back to something like that. I don't know where public school, public education is going, but I think that those who care about educating the next generation may have to ante up and make it happen and pitch in, create the environments. We were talking about this room being a comfortable environment. And I could see learning happening in at least 6 different areas and probably 20-some people doing maybe a dozen different things and accomplishing great education. And yeah, we may just have to look at different models.
Thank you guys very much. That was very enlightening and interesting. Appreciate it.